Hi, I'm Peggy Langdon and I'm here at Untangled Pearls, and I am so excited that you are interested in learning how to knit. These are some troubling times. Knitting is going to help you get over some of the stress and anxiety and just give you a little peace in your day and a chance to relax. But before you can get to that place, you have to learn how to do it. And it's a lot of fun. It's going to be a great adventure. In this first video, I'm going to just talk to you about yarn and needles and how we're going to proceed through this little set of instructional tutorials to get you to be in a place where you really enjoy knitting. First of all yarn is not created equal. There are lots of different types of yarn. There are yarns that come from sheep, yarns that come from goats, yarns that come from plants, yarns that come from a factory. And all of them have important things to contribute to the yarn world. You're going to find one or two or three or more, if you're like me, that you really love to work with. And some of them you may find out that you don't enjoy working with, but one is not necessarily better than the other. The type of yarn that you choose depends on the project that you're making, it depends on the person you're making it for, and it really depends on your own personal preference. So don't fall into that trap of thinking that one yarn is better than the other. For our beginning knitting series, I've chosen 2 yarns for you that you might want to take advantage of. If you have yarn at home, you're welcome to use that. This is just for people that are, don't have things, want something different. What I've chosen for this little series of videos is an acrylic I've chosen the 3 colors, the purple, the blue, the tan, and the purple, and then the appropriate needle size that goes with that. And then for wool, I've chosen Barocco wool in the tan, the purple, and the gray. And the reason I chose those colors are because you want to learn to knit with a slightly lighter color yarn. It shows what you're doing a little bit better. You don't want to go with too thin of a yarn or too thick of a yarn because they can make things a little bit more difficult. This is just a nice, good weight. It's called a worsted weight, and it's a good weight to start off with. A lot of sweaters are made out of worsted weight yarn. So that's what we're going to go with. We're also going to be working with circular needles. There's 3 different types of needles. Needles aren't all the same either, just like the yarn isn't. There's your circular needles that aren't really a circle, but they are 2 needles that are joined with a cord, and you can make a circle out of them. So that's kind of cool. And we're going to learn on these. Now, if you don't have circular needles, that's absolutely fine. You can learn on any type of needle that you have. In addition to circular needles, you may have some straight needles at home, and that's fine. There's some advantages of straight needles versus circular needles, but for the most part, most knitters nowadays want to work with circular needles, and I'll explain why as we go through this whole series. There's also double point needles. Double pointed needles are exactly what they say. They have a point at each end. Double point. You don't want these. If this is what you have in your little closet of supplies, this is going to be hard because your stitches can fall off both ends, and you don't want to get involved with that. But we will eventually get to using double pointed needles in our series. So the needle size that you would want if you're using a worsted weight yarn is a 7 or an 8. If the yarn that you have at home is a little bit heavier, maybe it's going into the Aran or the bulky, you're going to want to go up to make your needle size larger. If your yarn is lighter weight and it's going down into the DK, you're going to want to be using a size 5 needle, maybe a 4. I wouldn't want you to learn on anything smaller than a 4 or any yarn lighter weight than a DK because it just gets hard. It's like knitting with string, so it gets a little harder. Okay. So that's how we're going to start. If you should need yarn from us, you can give us a call and just let us know what you would like. If you want the acrylic package, we have the acrylic yarn with the needles for $16.40 plus tax. This is A. This is B. And This is C. All of these are pictured on Facebook, so you can get a chance again to look at that. Again, A, B, or C, and just tell us, oh, I'd like an acrylic in C, that lovely blue. And we'll make sure we have it available for you, and we'll even bring it right out to your car or send it to you for free. If you're within, no, we'll send it to you for free, as long as you're in the continental United States. For the wool, we have tan at A, purple at B, and gray at C. And again, these are on our on Facebook or Instagram. So if you follow us on one of those two, you can see these choices again. So get your yarn, get your needles, and get ready to go. Our first video, we're going to learn how to do a simple slip stitch, so you can actually, slip knot, so you can actually get your stitches onto the needles. We're going to learn a simple cast on, and we're going to learn the knit stitch. And then you can practice that for a little while. Once you feel like you've gotten that under control, we're going to come back and there'll be a video showing you how to do the purl stitch and a cast off. You want to practice those until you get your tension right and get comfortable with everything. Then, after that, we're going to do our first project. It's a really cute headband. It's knitted and purled, just using the knit stitch and the purl stitch, and it's got a great little twist in it, and we'll have that available with yarn and kits that you can pick out, or if you have yarn at home, you can do it with your yarn. I'm going to end this particular video right here and go to the next one where we actually start to knit. So thanks. We'll talk to you in a minute. Bye. Hi, welcome back to Beginning Knitting. Today we are going to do 3 things. We're going to make a slip knot, we're going to cast on, and we're going to learn the knit stitch. All absolutely critical to your knitting adventure. So the first thing we're doing is the slip knot. Now this is something that took me several years to learn. I don't know why. I had a serious problem with it, but it isn't too difficult. Take the end of your yarn, put it in your right hand, hold the attached part of the yarn with your left hand, take your right end and bring it over your left hand and making a loop like this. Then you're going to take your thumb and your forefinger and reach up into the center of your loop. So you're coming from underneath and reaching up. You're grabbing the yarn that's attached to the ball and pulling it through. And that's your slip knot. The reason that it's called a slip knot is because it slips. It goes up and down the yarn. It's kind of cool. I don't know why that was so hard for me to get, but I've got it now. Then we're going to take that loop and we're going to put it on our needle. And then we're going to slip that right up and voila! You have your first stitch on your needle and you're on your way to knitting. Now we need to get more than one stitch onto our needle. Don't be alarmed about this cord here. If you can, just pretend that it's not there. You'll see as you learn how to do this, you'll see why this cord is really nice and it's a nice thing to have. But if you're using straight needles, you don't have to worry about the cord. If you are using the circular needles, for now, just don't even pretend it's not there. Pretend you have 2 needles. Okay, now we're ready to get our stitches onto the needle. Now just a little heads up here. The yarn that is going down and attached to your ball of yarn, this is called your working yarn. This guy here is called your tail. The tail has become a nemesis for me because sometimes I mistake it for my working yarn and I start to knit with it and then I run out of yarn and I have to undo everything. You don't want too long of a tail. You don't want to kid yourself into thinking this is your working yarn, but you don't want too short of a tail either. Try to leave somewhere between 6-7 inches, and that will, make sure it'll help you to not have anything unravel, but it'll also allow you to know the tail from the working yarn. So the cast on that I'm going to talk to you about is a very simple cast on. It's referred to in a couple different ways. It's called a loop cast on. It's called a finger cast on. It's not the most popular of the cast ons. The most popular cast on that you will hear about is a long-tailed cast on, and we're going to try to get to that maybe in our third video. But for now, just in order for you to learn the knit stitch, this is the easiest way to cast on. So decide if you like your thumb or your forefinger. It doesn't really matter. I learned with a thumb. Some people have learned with your forefinger. All you're going to do is take your working yarn, not your tail, remember, your working yarn, put either your thumb or your finger behind that yarn and make a loop over your finger. All right, you want to just turn it just a little bit. You don't want it open like that. You want to have it turn just a little bit. You're going to take the needle that's in your right hand, go in through the front of that, and pull. Now, don't kill anybody. You're not supposed to pull so tightly that, you'll never get these stitches off of your needle, but you're not supposed to have it so loopy that they look like big loops. It's just a little bit of practice, a little bit of getting used to it. So again, if you are using your forefinger, the yarn goes in front. Turn your finger a little bit so you're kind of looking the side and the front. Put your needle right up through and pull. And now you have 3 stitches on. And we can continue to do this. Oh, you're going to love this part. You'll want to cast on for hours. Now, the disadvantage of this cast on is that it doesn't give a real solid edge down here. So if you're making a garment, you want something with a little bit more structure. But for learning, it's great. Now, the more stitches you put on your needle, the wider your knitting is going to be. If I was to knit just these stitches, we'd have a nice narrow strip of knitting. If I wanted to put 100 stitches on here, then we would have a whole bunch of stitches, and that's where they need to go down on the cord. And they just sit there on the cord until you get to them. The cord is intimidating, but don't let it be. It's just a stitch holder for when we're knitting. So for our purposes, if you would try now to cast on, let's put on 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, let's put on 16 stitches. And we can do that, and you can pause the video until you get comfortable with that, and then once you get all 16 of your stitches on, we'll come back and you'll learn the third part of this, the knit stitch. Okay, here we go. I've got 16 stitches on my needle. I'm holding this needle with the stitches in my right hand, and what I want to do is turn it so that the needle with the stitches is in my left hand. The tail should be down at the left. The working yarn should be on the right. And then I want to pick up my other needle in my right hand. So that's always the way, if you're a right-handed knitter like I am, that is always what happens. Your stitches that you've already completed will be on the left side, and the stitches that you're knitting new onto will be on the right side. So here I have this empty needle. All right, I'm going to take my needle, slide your stitches down close to the end of the needle, but you don't want them to fall off, so you'll get comfortable with that. Take your needle, insert it from the left side of the stitch through the front of the stitch into the back. So your needle's crossed. You don't want to go into the front and have the needle in the front. You want to go into the front and have the needle in the back. So once again, you go to the left side of the stitch that you want to knit, go into the stitch, and push your needle into the back. Holding on to those needles, it's going to be a little awkward at first. You've got to get comfortable with it. There's a little bit of a learning curve here. Holding on to those 2 needles with your left hand, reach around and grab your working yarn, the yarn that's attached to the ball, with your right hand. Take that yarn and put it in front of the back needle and down in between the 2 needles. So now you've kind of got a little stopgap here. It can't go any further. That's where you want it. So again, you're taking your yarn, you're going behind the back needle, bring it around in front, and gently pull it down till you can't pull it down any further. Then you're going to take your back needle. This is the working needle. This is the guy that's doing all the work. And you're going to come through and you're going to go into the loop and back up in front of the needle. All right? You're going to wrap your yarn, and I'm going to do that again. You don't have to get that point. I just want to get into a fresh stitch. So here I am. I've gone to the back, from the front to the back. Shoot, sorry. I've wrapped my yarn. I've come down through, and I don't know if you can see that. I'm hoping you can. And you go right underneath there and slide your stitch off. Again, from the left, front, cross to the back, make your X. Your yarn comes behind your back needle, in between the two needles. Push your needle down and send it through that little window up to the front, and then slide everything off. There's lots of awkwardness in this. This first row is always the hardest, so don't be alarmed. The stitches are on there tighter from the cast on. Behind and through, down and in front, off. Okay? Push your needle behind, around and through, down and off the front. Now, this might not look like much right now, but the more of these knit stitches that you put on, the better you're going to be. So we're going to pause just for a second while I go to the end of this row, and then I'm going to show you what I would like you to practice with over the next couple of days or until you're comfortable with it. Okay, so now we've got our first row of knit stitches done. You're well on your way in this great adventure. We are going to take and transfer our needle to the left hand, pick up our needle again in the right hand, because remember, the stitches that you knit are always on the left and the stitches that you are knitting are going to go to the right. This time our tail and our working yarn are both at the same end. That means in this case you're on the wrong side of the fabric. Not a big deal, just make sure that you don't knit with your working yarn. We're going to insert our needle from the front to the back. That's the working yarn, there's the yarn. Wrap it around, come through, and go down. And as we work through this row, you'll start to see how cute your stitches look. What you're doing is you are knitting in garter stitch. And the garter stitch is when every stitch is knit versus knitting some and purling others. So you'll continue down this row and you'll enjoy yourself. Remember to work on your tension. You want your stitches to be close to the same size, and it takes a little bit of practice. But this yarn is what determines your tension. So you want to get used to, pulling it at about the same rate for every single stitch. Don't wrap one real tightly and one real loosely. You'll get to decide, do I like to wrap a yarn around my finger and bring it up like this? There's all kinds of ways, but you have to find what's comfortable for you. I generally just wrap it right around there and come down. Now I'm done with my second row, and what I've done is I've formed this nice little ridge of bumps. Those are garter stitches. And you're going to continue practicing this for as long as it takes. You don't have to do 16 stitches. You can cast on 20 stitches. You can cast on 100 stitches. 16 makes going through the rows a little bit manageable. Once you get comfortable with that, come and watch the next video, and we're going to teach you how to purl. Thanks very much. Hope you're enjoying this. Don't forget, give Untangled Pearls a call if you have any questions at all, and we'll see you soon. Happy knitting!